Hello everybody, thank you so much for coming. I'm Pip Rich, the editor of Livingetc Editor, and today we're joined by Staffan Tollgård, whose name is above the door, so I'm sure you know who he is, and Sebastian Herkner, the international design legend. So as well as not really seeing each other in real life, as Monique mentioned, one of the things that is being characterised by the last 2 years is finding new ways to work. And that has been, I think, potentially quite a positive for some of us in some ways. And so what I want to do today is find out how a designer based in Germany worked with a brand based in Canada, Manor Parts, and has ended up in a London studio. The collaboration has come together between these two men who have never actually met in real life before. This is their first time in the same room. So that, I mean, nothing says 2022 quite like that. And I want to find out how we can take lessons from that about bringing creative projects to the fore that perhaps may not have been possible 2 years ago because we wouldn't have thought we could work in such a way. So before we get into all of the work stuff, just as a little icebreaker, so Stephan, what is most exciting you about design at the moment?
Thanks, Pip. I was change. I think you were saying just now. I mean, spring is the time of change anyway. But it does feel like we're coming out of the last 2 years, and I'm excited to see how much has changed. You know, people are living differently, people are working differently, and whenever there's a big change, I think as designers, there's opportunity and kind of read into that, see how people will function in new spaces. You know, balancing the hybrid of virtual and face-to-face meetings and work. So I think change is more so than before is what's going on right now. And currently my projects span workplace as well as home, and we've put offices back in homes, which we haven't done for years, and we've made offices feel more like home, because the offices now feel that they need to compete with home, so they need to be an amazing place to come and work to. You know, what if in this hybrid world, what are we going to do at work and what are we going to do at home? Because no one's going to come in 5 days a week anymore. I think there's going to be some sort of hybrid. So yeah, I'm excited about all the change that's happening.
Great. What about you, Sebastian?
Yeah, hello everyone. So it's great to travel again and to be here after 2 years again in London. And for me, the biggest change maybe was I moved my studio last week after 15 years in my former, let's say, student apartment. And now we growed a lot over the years, and now we are 8, and now we have a bigger space, a new perspective. So I'm really happy about this because, like everyone, we also used to work for a couple of weeks, months, 2020 in lockdown. And as a design studio, it doesn't really work. And because it's a teamwork, you need the materials, you need the contact with your team and the machines, and all the communication. No? Design is about communication and the use of senses. And this was all missing, so I'm really looking forward now to the new space and to start traveling again.
It's so interesting you say that, because obviously you guys haven't met before, so there are clearly ways and means that some parts of design can be done, you know, across the globe, and hopefully we'll come on to that in a moment. I wanted to start not at the beginning, but so this is the culmination. This event really is the culmination of a partnership with you, Sebastian, and Manor Parts, and then you, that's ended up obviously here in the showroom. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did for Manor Parts? What have you designed? What's your collection for them?
Yeah, well, Manor Parts is a company or brand based in Toronto, founded by a German from Munich, by Stephan Weishaupt. And I met Stephan about 10 years ago. He has a couple of showrooms in the States, and he was one of my first dealers with the Bell table. And he sold it quite successful, and then he invited me, so at the end we became very close friends. And he had the vision to start his own company with his own philosophy, very artistic, let's say, furniture, sculptural furnitures with an own direction, produced in Europe, mainly Germany and Italy. And one of the first pieces I did a collection of side tables, coffee tables. And the second one was the Meinkai lamp, like you can see here, with the glass blown pearls onto each other with a quite smart dimmer to dim it up and down without steps. And we just added also the one with the 3 pearls you can see here on the console, and which is actually our latest design, the console. There's also a dining table, different sizes available. It's made in solid oak in a small company in the Bavarian forest. And the idea was, like I said, it's really about sculptures, it's about art, because Stephan is very close to art. And so this was inspired by Henry Moore, which was one of my topics at final degree at school, that time like 20 years ago when I had the art classes. And I wanted to work with the material, the solid material, which is important also for my work. So it's really need to be honest and strong, and the intersection between the space and the material itself. And it's also the balancing of the tabletop of the console in the contrast to the very slim leg. So it's really about the material and the craftsmanship, of course. You know, there's a lot of handwork, there's CNC milling. So it's really the balance of both worlds, from the traditional crafts to new technologies.
And Stephan, what point did you get involved in the project, and what was your involvement, in fact?
Well, I met Stephan a few years later in one of the showrooms in North America, in the New York one, and I was struck by how similar kind of our view on I call it functional sculpture, and this idea that furniture can be a piece of sculpture as well as practical and functional. I think it was we had very similar ideas. So and at that point, Manor Parts weren't represented in the UK at all. So it was an opportunity to work with someone that I respected and I liked what he was trying to do. His showrooms in America is called Avenue Road, and they're very, very successful indeed. And I think Manor Parts was his desire to kind of like Avenue Road is more of a dealer. It carries lots of brands, whereas Manor Parts is born out of Stephan's idea what furniture should be.
I like to think of you, Stephan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to think of you as this kind of international man of mystery who travels the world.
I'd like to think that as well. So.
Picking up kind of global projects as you go, whatever excites you, this is where you go, and you bring them back, and they all land here. First of all, is that fair?
Absolutely.
Great.
No. I think I'm more of a magpie. I kind of I do fly around the world, and then I pick up things that I like and try and bring them back. I mean, the company, which is now 17, just turned 17, started as a pure interior design studio, and that's still probably the biggest part of our company. But as and when we had international projects, or working with international craftsmen, or traveling the world for design fairs, I kept on finding these things that were just stunning, and they either weren't represented properly in the UK, or I'd never seen in the UK. So I just needed to get a space to kind of gather them all in. So.
And obviously you couldn't travel quite so much the last 2 years as you would have liked to have done. So how did your work practices change?
That's actually a very good question. It was very frustrating. I'm talking to Sebastian about prototyping stage was the hardest thing. Filippo and I, who designed for Tollgard, we had video conference calls with someone walking around the factory and kind of showing us pieces, and it was very difficult to figure out if it was actually what we intended or not. But I think what happened is probably less discovery of new brands, but continuing working with the smaller brands that we had already discovered, because there's a trust there in terms of quality, and so you can actually trust an image, as it were, if it comes from, but for instance, working with Manor Parts, there's a number of items I'm very happy to put on the floor here, like the Savigny Platz console, or like the Jabe Pusherberg, the new chair from them. having never sat in it or having never actually seen it, because you trust the craftsmanship and the design of manor parts.
It's really interesting because it begs the question: how do new relationships get formed in this digital age? And I don't know whether you have an answer for that. And actually, as somebody who has lots of collaborations and regular, new clients and new people to work with, how does a new relationship form?
Yeah, well, I knew Stephan from Man of Parts already for a couple of years, and we did projects together, so it was much easier to work on something new, also in a digital way. And then, of course, sometimes I could travel to Bavaria to see a prototype, or we did samples with DHL and so on. So I think it was a big learning for everyone, also for the other companies I work with, to find a way of digital collaborations. And I think it will be also very good to use it in the future, because in the past I went to Milan just to see a detail of a screw, and this you can solve also with a picture with WhatsApp, and it was a lot of flying before. So I think you need a good balance nowadays, that it's not always important really to fly to the client or prototyping, but of course I need to touch it, I need to sit on it or to see the details, but you don't have to do personally all the time. But we also started project with a completely new client, the one from South Africa with the planters, and I just met him last Friday in Berlin, so a couple of days ago, and the product is finished and he showed me the product pictures. So you need to trust also the other person, and you feel during the calls and WhatsApp chats, and I think it was now sometimes much easier to communicate with the people, also with sometimes the more important people in the company. Before it was sometimes so difficult just to get in contact with them, and now everyone was maybe more at home or bored or had also more time because they couldn't travel. So it was actually sometimes also benefit.
Do you think, because obviously we were talking a little bit earlier before this conversation about the rise in fuel prices and things like that is making it harder. Presumably, the fact that you can just see a picture of a screw on WhatsApp does keep the cost down. Do you think there might be a democratization of design then, that some things that previously people couldn't afford to do, to fly around the world to look at a join, can now do something a bit more affordably?
Yeah, but I don't know if this is the most important point. I think there's also the bad fact that during COVID and now the energy price, a lot of crafts or craftsmen disappeared also. I know from a couple of glass blowers in Murano that they closed completely forever because they can't afford their gas anymore, or it's not in relation of the production anymore. So we also face this issue with some of my existing successful products, that we need to look for new suppliers somewhere else because a lot of companies also closed, or it also with wood prices went up and so on. So it's not actually the fact that now prices can go down, it's actually more, unfortunately, the opposite.
Are you finding things changing in the way you're going to work going forward, Stephan?
Absolutely. I think, like Sebastian said, there's a balance to be had now. There's a number of meetings where not everyone needs to be in the room anymore. I think probably our most successful bit was being able to present to a client, ensuring that they had a bigger screen. We could actually walk them through a client presentation quite easily online. And it didn't need to be printed out, it didn't need to be, you didn't necessarily. And it meant that we could have more meetings more frequently. Clients were happy to have a meeting twice a week to get an update. We can walk them through the process better rather than build up and have them come into London, for a massive meeting every 2 or 3 weeks. They felt more part of it that way. I think, again, I'm agreeing with Sebastian. I think it's the studio environment is where we've also realized that we need to be in the same room as much as possible. We need to be able to kind of catch things over people's shoulders, discuss things, put your hand up and say, I need help. That's much easier and much more intuitive if you're in the same room. So we're still working out the balance, I think,
Yeah.
but there will definitely be one. So.
Is your team working any differently now going forward, Sebastian? In the studio, are you working together differently post-pandemic, if we're calling it that now? Have you taken on any new work practices or any new ways of communicating with each other?
Actually, not really. No. Of course, some topics are different, and a lot of clients ask for home offices, and I always say no, I don't want to do a home office because I don't see myself working at home. There are a lot of people they enjoy home office for sure. For me, going to the work, it's 5 minutes walk. So here in London, it could be also an hour. I used to live here, or even more. So, but for me, I really need the studio, I need the team. So, and I really just want to design products I really want to have, or I need, or that's why I always say I don't want to do another home office. But the working with the team, I think it's more or less the same like before. And there's not a big change. We are still scribbling and doing our cardboard models and 3D printing. Maybe 3D printing is even now more small scale and ship it to a client and back. Yeah.
Is your process for seeing prototypes or parts of prototypes different? Obviously, you mentioned that perhaps you're not seeing in the flesh every single screw now, so that might be something that's changed.
I think that the way of communicating in digital way changed definitely. And I'm a happy one that I have the experience of this traditional meeting, so I know which question I need to ask the client. Can you show me a picture of this detail, this detail, this detail? You know, I think younger people just starting with a digital product development, they would never ask those aspects or points, you know?
Well, that's what I was going to come to, because I feel like design is a global language, but sometimes it's not. And what happens when you, I wonder if you do have to be really forensic now on what you're asking people, and you have to be really specific to what you're asking because you can't read each other in quite the same way. Have you picked up any tricks as to how to navigate those design conversations digitally?
That's a really good question. I think having been through the prototype stage, the physical prototype stage before, I think I'm also equipped to ask the right questions. And you know, with video conferencing, it's very easy to kind of walk around the product and ask them to turn it around and look at all of the details. But I did hear a very funny story from, but this is ages ago. This is 20 years ago when they sent off a picture to be something to be slightly copied, I think, in the Far East. And the angle of the picture, you could only see 3 legs of the chair because the 4th leg was directly behind the front one. So they made a chair with 3 legs. And it couldn't stand up at all. And that's when you kind of realize that the prototyping is, it's better to be in the room. But no, I think, like Sebastian, I think we now know enough to have those conversations early on. And then I too now finally, it's much easier to fly over and actually physically see the product before production starts, and which is vital.
So now this is the first time that you two have actually got together in a room. What are you cooking up next, or how's this partnership going to continue, do you think? Both very cagey.
I entered the room.
Something secret.
I came here at 3 o'clock, so 52 minutes.
We haven't decided.
Yeah, but the day is long, right? No, honestly, I'm really happy to be here to see the showroom, because I just did some stalking on Instagram and digital to understand what kind of brands, because that's important. And I think it's like with my friend Stephan, US, I think you have a certain sensibility and you are quite brave also to pick, let's say, underdogs, or not those just big brands. And I think that's very important, and I hope also that I think more people, interior architects, also pick products which are not just those iconic pieces of Castiglione or even my bell table, maybe. because I think this shows much more about the personality and the character of a person, not just these products that people know and then it's something safe in the investment. And I think here it's really about the quality, the tactility, the material, the honesty, and I think then a product is really also sustainable, which is very important.
Actually, your last point is really important. I think people talk about, rightly, about sustainability in design all the time, and in terms of the footprint of it is through manufacturing, being delivered, etc. And the most sustainable product is the one that's so beautiful and so well made that it lasts a couple of 100 years, right? So if we can design pieces that not just this generation but the next will enjoy, that's really sustainable. And with my collaboration with Minor Parts and therefore with Sebastian, I've found a company that believes in the same ethos as myself. So for me, it's fantastic. They do, through Stephan around the world, but mainly in America, he finds these designers that believe what he believes in, and he backs the right horse. So then I'm fine backing the underdog in the beginning, and I wouldn't call Sebastian an underdog anymore. So, but I think with Sebastian as well, we mentioned it's a small world in design. So Indigenous is an interesting brand who produce planters. You'll see them dotted around the showroom here, and Sebastian has just designed for Indigenous, and it's being launched in the next few weeks. So there's I think his pieces will work their way into my showroom always.
And as the world begins to open back up again now, and globalization becomes something much more exciting again, and there's full of a world of possibility, what do you take from this, Sebastian? Staffan, how inspired do you feel about globalization again?
I think cautiously optimistic. I love the fact that actually in lockdown we looked around, a small diameter around our own house. We walked a dog in the same forest every day for a few months, and you started seeing things nearby that you didn't know. I think you got suppliers nearby, and I mean, food supply, anything. So I think that there's a wonderful balance to be had, whereby we need to travel, get inspired, and then I would say with Sebastian as well, your designs are very transitional. They travel well. And it's because you travel. If you travel the world and get inspiration from different cultures, the idea is that you can come up with products that can not only one thing, but which can speak to a larger group of people. But I think balance seems to be started with change, but I think balance is the word of going forward, because I think it is the balance of having things locally produced as well as design that travels the world.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting topic around sustainability and travel, obviously, but I think what you can look at the balance, and somebody might have a great idea that you can take from in another country. So the sustainability comes from the idea rather than maybe the miles around it. And I think it's, again, all about balance. Sebastian, is that something that you're folding into your own design now and taking ideas from other places perhaps you might not have done 20 years ago when you were at college?
Yeah, of course, this is a huge inspiration for me traveling. Before COVID, I was traveling like 150 days a year. It was maybe too much. And I really enjoyed also to stay at home and to travel around Germany, especially Eastern Germany. I've never been, just Berlin. Everyone knows Berlin, but it was beautiful. Also go to Leipzig and Dresden, all those other cities. It was really fantastic. But now I'm, of course, looking forward to continue my project in Colombia, for example, or with the plan in South Africa. So it's not just about those countries which are dedicated to design or most famous. I really like to work in countries with a very high sense for crafts, but maybe not for design in our perspective, and to translate it in a respectful way together with the craftsman there, with the local one, in new products.
I think what I'm getting from both of you is this wonderful sense of editing. So it's working out what's important to do in real life, what's important to do virtually, what you can do virtually, and just making the best use of every moment of time, so that you can constantly devote your energy to collaborating and creating and being dynamic, rather than sitting in airport lounges if you don't need to, and or even in airport not lounges if you don't need to. But so I think that is a really nice message that we can all take from that. So I want to say thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story with us. There will be time for kind of informal questions at the end. I think these guys are going to hang around, so if you have anything burning you want to ask, do feel free to come up and mingle with them. And thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.